Okay, everyone, welcome back. I'm finally back now after getting sick and everything like that. So I'm finally coming back to do this next playthrough, part 4 of Hyperdimensional Neptune. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off, and as we kick things off, I'm going to go ahead and explain what's going on at the same exact time. Now, right now, the very first thing that that happens whenever we enter LeanBox is the fact that R4 is, oops, this person tends to be very angry at Histoire. Ignore the fact that I just said that. Is very angry at Histoire because she's been contacting Neptune. She's trying to figure out what's really going on, and you get a little bit of a signal on what's going on in the game, but you still don't find out everything that's going on. So while this conversation goes on, this is actually a dream for Neptune. Well, it's not a dream, but she's really seeing what's happening, but she's seeing this in a dream. Now, while this is going on, I'm going to go ahead and try to explain really quickly what's going on with my channel and what took me so long. Because it's been about 2 to 3 weeks since the last time I uploaded. And the reason why is because I got sick and I got busy. I have a job offer. I even, at one point in time, got into an accident, which was actually fairly recently. But I'm here, and I apologize to everyone who watches these videos on a normal basis. I'm really sorry. I did not mean to miss everything, but just life came up. I'm sorry. I'll try not to do that again. I actually still want to really rush through this playthrough because the reason why is because someone else has already done this, and I want to get to a game that he hasn't already done, which is going to be Trinity Universe. But don't worry about that. I still have a long way to go. I have to finish this game and do the extra videos and everything like that. Outside of that, I did make a few changes to this, and this is actually a change that I planned to do in the first place, and it's going to go on with all my games. For the first few parts, you're going to see everything that I do, which is going to be running through the dungeons and everything like that. But, come back to that in a second. Neptune has just woken up, and she's waking up in LeanBox. This is actually the very first event in LeanBox, which, if you've been paying attention to my channel, you've noticed that I have already been to and left LeanBox and went to Lowee. And the reason for this is, for some strange reason, my channel 4... the channel 4 after I rendered it after doing the post commentary last time did not come out at all, so I wasn't able to upload it, and I don't really know why. So I had to redo all my voice commentary. So unfortunately, that's just how it turned out, and that's the reason why part 5 is up, but part 4 isn't. And then when I was going to get ready to redo the part 4, I got sick. So anyway, it's just your general antics between Compa and Neptune. They just woke up and they're little playing around like normal Neptune things, and I actually really like this conversation between Neptune and Compa when they're talking about how fluffy Compa's hair is, and I like this conversation because it shows how non-serious this game is, which is a good thing. This game is good for its nonsensical ways. And slightly perverted at the same exact time. But anyway, welcome to LeanBox. This is the actual first time you're supposed to have seen LeanBox. But due to events beyond control that I've already explained, this is not the first time. So the girls go to the Basilicom, and they meet 2 people here, and 2 people are important. One to the story in the entire game, which is this person, Conversation, who is she is an evangelist, I guess, from Lowee. Essentially, she's supposed to be coming to LeanBox to get people to go to Lowee who like Lady Whiteheart, which is kind of weird, and the reason why it's kind of weird, we'll get into that in the story. It's actually really weird because it's specific to LeanBox. This happened on Lost Station or Planet Neptune, this would be a little different, but let's not worry about that. The second person that we meet that's important to the story of LeanBox. His name is Ivor. He is the Archbishop of LeanBox. And Ivor is really important to the story, and I don't want to go into it for now anyway. But they ask if they can get a map so they can go into so they can go find monsters in He's like, we don't want anything to happen to you guys, so here's this map to give you so that y'all know where to avoid. Here's the second thing that I didn't mention. Well, I started to mention. I said before that in the first few parts you're going to see everything that I do before I cut it down. This is where I'm cutting it down. In this particular game, I'm actually cutting out all the dungeons, so I'm only showing you the boss fights, essentially, and all the important events. And the reason for this is, you don't need to see me go through every single dungeon in the game. It's really 10 minutes of your life that you're not going to get back. So, I might as well just cut it out for you. So, to save you yourself time, it's a little bit more in editing for me, especially since my program does not like to be nice all the time, but it's quite helpful. So, Neptune and the party, after they demolish the dungeon, because apparently it's incredibly weak, and it is incredibly weak even on the first time through, they decide that they're going to go back to the Basilicom to show in Neptune, with her Neptune in her CPU form, so that she can see what's going on. And at this point in time, this is something I meant to cut out, but I actually got a little lost because for some strange reason it didn't show all the events, and I meant to cut this out, but I'm probably going to leave it for now. But I'm also going to show... Did I show that event? There's an event that I should be showing really, really soon. Yes, I am going to show that event. And this is an important event, and I didn't mean to do this now, but I can go ahead and go into it. This is part of the recruitment events. Aya gets kicked in the stomach by Neptune in her sleep. Anyway, this is the first of the recruitment events, and the recruitment events are essentially events specified around a single character to add them to your party. And this particular character that we're looking at is actually my favorite DLC character in this game. And if you can actually meet her, well, you see her in the game, but you don't necessarily meet her if you don't have her DLC. This is 5BP. She's known in game as 5BP, but she's also goes by the name Lyrica. We're not going to find that out now, but since it has no direct impact on the story, I can go ahead and tell you what her name is. And Lyrica's an interesting character. In my opinion, she's the best DLC character, especially for fighting. That doesn't quite mean much, but we'll get to that when we get to the battle story. But she's also one of my favorite characters design-wise as well. All around, she's my third favorite character in the game. That's saying something. She's got a great design, interesting personality, and she's decent in battles. Of course, when you stack her up next to the goddesses, like everybody else, they're not all that useful. And this is an interesting little event because they just run into each other, and IF is spying on Lyrica. And she startles her. Because Lyrica is extremely shy in person outside of her pop star persona. Another interesting thing to note is, in this game, the DLC characters, outside of their battle voices, they do not have English voice acting for events. So, if you want to hear them talk, you better recite the Japanese. That's your only choice. And it kind of sort of points to how unfinished this game feels, and I'm going to get to that when I get to the review section of this game, which is going to be a separate event, a separate video that I'm going to do at the very end. Anyway, that's enough about that. Hopefully at this point in time, I figure I'm going to go into Lowee. I'm going to go ahead and cut ahead to the entrance to Lowee. Welcome to Lowee. Lowee is based on the Nintendo Wii, obviously, and it's a land covered in snow, and it's kind of laid back when you really think about it. We went over some of this in the next video, and I don't quite remember what I talked about in that video, so if I double state myself, well, it's just gonna happen. Anyway, Lowee is a bit different from all the other places because it's got multiple different basilicums for people to go into, and this is a good / bad thing. The reason why it's a good thing is, well, it's a good thing to the story, but it's also a bad thing at the same time. And we're going to get into that in a second of why it's a good thing and why it's, well, it's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing because of this event is because this is a local Basilicom. It's not the main Basilicom like we've ever run into in all the other lands. So we have to actually go through a dungeon to get to the Basilicom in this land. And it's kind of a poor excuse because it's the same way that they did it in everything. You have to go through a dungeon before you get to the Basilicom of each individual land, essentially, before you get to meet the goddess. And quite frankly, there's an annoying thing about this particular goddess, and it doesn't have to do with her personality. It has to do with stupidity, really, and I'll go into that in a second. But it's very cold, and if you've seen the character design, so you have no idea how they don't freeze on Lowee. Seriously, Compa looks like she's the warmest one, and she's still not really dressed for snow. But it's another one of those party conversations between IF and Neptune where you can see a little bit more about their personalities. Well, you don't get to see a little bit more about the personalities, but you get to see them interact a little bit more. But as we can see, the Basilicom is kind of far away from everyone, so they can't really get to it. And this is meant to keep the goddess busy, so that keep the goddess safe, essentially, of the land of Lowee. I really should cut out all these mistakes, but I think it's nice to show. I'm gonna go ahead and cut through the dungeon because it's just to get to the end of the dungeon. It's not even a boss at the end of it. So here we meet the goddess of this land, Lady Whiteheart. And this also adds one of the biggest plot holes in the entire game is in this. Well, it's not a plot hole. It's one of the writing techniques done in this game. You probably have already noticed it for the most part. You saw it in Lost Station, and you're going to see it here. But it's done terribly here. And I'll probably get into that in part 6 as to why it's so terrible. But just know, remember Whiteheart. You should remember Whiteheart for this particular section. And Whiteheart's an interesting character. She's not really interesting. Well, she's interesting, but she's also kind of cliche. She's your cliche tsundere character, except she goes to the point of almost being yandere. And if you don't know what either of those statements mean, you need to brush up on your Jap. So essentially, Neptune and everyone want to meet Whiteheart. And Whiteheart has this issue with Neptune, so she instantly starts insulting her. And these key fragments are important. I don't quite remember if I've explained what the key fragments are for, but the key fragments allow us to get to Histi, or Histoire. And Whiteheart, even when she likes someone, isn't all that forthcoming. So that makes this that much worse. But essentially, she's just trying to shoot her off because she does not like Neptune. Well, yeah. We'll go with she doesn't like Neptune. Now this conversation, it's a little, it's semi not really important. It's pretty much conversation acting like she's over Whiteheart by lecturing her about her actions, which she could use a good lecture. And the way that conversation talks to the way the conversation talks to Whiteheart is kind of important. Because she almost talks down to Whiteheart. So now we're talking to Financier, and Financier is a little important. She becomes more important as things go, but yeah. But here's the really important part of this. Conversation mentions something about Overlord Momus. And Overlord Momus he's quite important. He's apparently so powerful that the goddesses had to escape from him. And that's interesting because we saw some of what happened up there, and we aren't aware. Momus wasn't actually mentioned at all. We've been hearing about the Overlord, but this is the first time we've actually heard anything really truly in depth about it. So anyway, back at this point, we're back in LeanBox. And that's because I couldn't progress any further, so I had to come back to LeanBox. This is weird. This is the first time I've ever had to switch back and forth between Lowee and LeanBox like this. And at this point, we finally reported back and said that, hey, we finished the dungeon, and it wasn't really worth anything. And he's like, I thought I told you not to go to the dungeon. And they're like, yeah, that's where we wanted to go in the first place. That's the whole entire reason why we asked for it. And he starts trying to wonder a little bit about them, because he's wondering about these three girls who were able to completely destroy who were able to take down this dungeon. And interestingly enough, he mentions that Conversation had talked about those three. And it's weird because we really just met Conversation. So how does she know that we're going around fighting different monsters? And then we flash back to Conversation with Ivor. and he mentions the console war. And she mentions Overlord Momus again. And all the CPUs had all descended at about the same time except for Planet Neptune's. And we know why that is. But the thing that conversation says is you need to get rid of Neptune. If you get rid of Neptune, Planet Neptune will cease, and then all the other goddesses will get stronger. So it's in his best interest to get rid of Neptune, and we're really starting to see a little bit of who Conversation is and the Archbishop Ivor's character. Then we learn a little bit more about Ivor. Ivor was strict when it comes to heathens, heretics, and the guild. And we already know who the heretics in the guild are. Heretics are people who follow a different CPU than the land of their birth. And the guild is basically a group of people, a group of heretics. That's essentially who they are. I think I double explained that because I explained that in the next video as well. But anyway, that's not important. Well, it is. Now we cut out another dungeon, so we went ahead and jumped into the boss. I could actually probably go ahead and cut out the bosses as well, but I feel like something would be missing if I did, so I just left it that way. I'm also showing this one off because I'm actually using IF a little bit. And this is not really the capacity that she can use IF. Well, it is because she still has to attack. But IF works more like an evasive tank, not a damage tank in comparison to Neptune. I mean, she does have a decent output of damage, but not compared to Neptune, not at all. And we're about to see a little bit more about how hyperactive Neptune is. Now, of course, the translation is not direct at all, but it's well, it's not pretty spot on, but it is still, it's not direct. But she's bummed to see Ivor, and Ivor is here saying, hey, we're going to invite you for a party because of the bounty hunter job that you just did. And that just reeks of a setup, but of course Neptune's too dense to see that. And I guess at this point in time, she has no real reason to suspect Ivor of anything. And now we're at the party, and Neptune and Kampa are acting like their normal selves, but this event does not... Kampa and Neptune are not the focus of this event. The focus of this event is actually IF, and we're going to get more into that in a few seconds whenever their conversation catches up. And we actually learned a lot about this game, and I just flew right over the red ring table thing because, quite frankly, I am, just due to the fact that I've loved JRPGs, I love JRPGs for the longest period of time, been playing them since the Super Nintendo. I don't really like Xbox because Xbox didn't treat JRPGs the best. I mean, they got a few, like Blue Dragon and Star Ocean, The Last Hope, but that's about it. There's not an extreme amount that they got. Now, Ivor is sitting here talking directly with IF, which is a little freaky, but we can live with it. Excuse me. And Ivor mentions that IF is a guild moderatess, which we didn't even know in the original. We had to find out a little bit later. Well, as a matter of fact, we don't find that out until Lowee, but unless you went here first. But Ivor knows and he reveals it, and IF's like, it wasn't a secret, but it's kind of creepy that you checked up on me. And he wants to talk to IF personally. And this is where things get a little interesting. I mentioned it before, but we'll mention it again. The guild is a gathering of people who follow other CPUs than the one in the land of their birth. So, for example, if IF was born in if IF was born in Lost Station, then she should serve Blackheart. But if she likes Greenheart better, then she would become a part of the guild and she would actually be hated in her land. And Ivor does not like heretics. He does not like people who do not like their original CPUs. And that's the reason why there was a purge. He got rid of the guild. And that's the reason why there is no guild in LeanBox. It is now in Lowee. And they throw around these two different statements, these two different titles, extremists and moderatists. And moderatists are people who serve other CPUs, and they don't mind. You can like who you like. I just want to serve the CPU I want to serve. Extremists are those who want everyone who serve all other CPUs and the one that they like dead. So we're skimming over a lot of this, but it's quite important that IF likes Greenheart, and that's the reason why the Archbishop can stand her. And he's like, hey, if you get rid of Noir, you can become a citizen of Greenbox, and you can become a citizen of LeanBox, and you can serve Greenheart however you want to. And he wants her to poison Neptune. And she's like, I want to meet the goddess first. How do I know that this is what she really wants? And this reveals Ivor's nature, because he's been saying to everyone this whole entire time, hey, the goddess is busy, the goddess is busy, the goddess is busy. And it just turns out that she just came from a really hardcore gaming session. And she's in her room, essentially. That's effectively what's going on. She's busy with monster affairs. No, she's in her room. So we're going to get introduced to the most interesting... Well, we're going to get introduced to a weird goddess. And this goddess is actually Greenheart. Greenheart's an interesting character because she's a little fan service, but at the same exact time, she's a gamer girl. And she's a hardcore gamer girl. We find that out through events going through with her, and she constantly talks about games, and it's the #1 thing on her mind. But IF gets to the point of being starstruck about being around her. So we leave the sanctuary where we actually go back into Greenheart's room. This is one of the very few... Do you actually see the other goddesses' rooms? Actually, I don't think so. So this is the first goddesses and only goddesses' room that you see. And an interesting thing is if conversation, well, if Ivor was to attempt to try to do what conversation told him he should do and destroy Neptune, Planet Neptune would cease to exist, and he would be getting rid of the very games that his goddess loves so much. So it's kind of an interesting situation. Greenheart also seems to be the most adult of the four goddesses, and as the time of this recording, you've already seen Whiteheart, but you haven't seen the other two. And you've already seen Blackheart, and definitely already know Purple Heart. So she's the only one that actually, the only person in this entire game that actually seems like she's an adult instead of a late teen. Anyway, that's about it. I'll see you in the next part.